Hi, welcome back to the Relationship Restaurant with Poppy and Jeff Spencer. This is podcast number 25, and we have an incredible special guest with us that Jeff will introduce in just a moment. But the Relationship Restaurant is all about serving up heart-healthy communication for all of our interpersonal relationships. If you ever want to leave a message or a question or a comment, please find us at poppyandjeff.com, poppyandgeoff.com. Lend us your ear. And so today
we have somebody from way down under. Tyson Franklin is talking to us from Australia, and he is a former podiatrist and a successful business owner in Queensland, Australia, now living in Cairns, Australia. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I love the way everybody says Cairns.
It's Cairns, okay.
It is so good to be here, guys.
Two-time best-selling author, speaker, host of It's No Secret with Dr. T, your own podcast as well, and creator of the 365-hour mental and physical challenge, which we've looked at a bunch of those challenges, and it's hot there. We notice it's hot when you're walking around Australia. It's like Florida.
It's extremely hot. Yeah, it's probably somebody said that Cairns is very similar weather to Florida. And they have alligators, we have crocodiles.
Oh, right. You know what? Right near our home last week, a sheriff deputy arrested an alligator that was in the parking lot outside the grocery store about 5 minutes from our home. It was crazy.
He arrested him.
He put him in the back seat.
Okay.
He arrested the gator.
It was really hard to get the cuffs on, but besides that, it was fun.
They've had the same problem here where I think there was a lady not too long ago, she's sitting on the main road, the main highway in Cairns, and there was a crocodile sitting at the bus stop.
He was waiting for the next bus. He was waiting for the number 7 bus, right?
Yeah, it was just sunning itself, and it just come out of the creek near the bus stop there and just sat in the sun, just get a few rays.
I love it.
So they came and carted that one off too. So, yeah, they're a bit of a problem.
Well, welcome, Tyson. We are so excited to have you with us. Our journey with you started about 8 months ago when we started listening to your 365-hour challenge, mental and physical challenge. So let's start with that right away. Tell us about the inspiration behind that.
It was one of those things where I had just turned 50 years of age. Which, this will sound funny, but I never expected I'd actually live this long.
Okay, now wait a minute.
Yeah.
Why
not?
My father passed away at 49.
Oh.
His father passed away, I think, at like 52. And then my dad passed away at 49.
Sorry.
And I was 17 at the time. It sort of slightly scarred me my whole life that I actually had it written in my diary right to the hour when my father died when I was exactly the same age. And when I actually got past that, I went, wow, you know what? I might actually live to be 100 yet. But what it was, I'd turned 50, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. I made it to 50. But it was one of those things that I'd read something prior to that if you, from the time you reach 40, if you don't look after yourself, you put on a kilo, which is, say, 1.6 pounds a year, every year for the rest of your life. And when I turned 50, I jumped on the scales, and I was about 10 kilos overweight. I'm thinking, well, at least I'm keeping on track.
I'm right on schedule.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and I was probably a little bit more because I'm an overachiever. I went, wow, I really have to do something. And I kept making these things that I'm going to do some exercise, but something would always come up. You'd come home in the afternoon, you think, that's it, I'm going to go for a walk or a bit of a jog. And the next door neighbour would call out, hey, would you like a beer? And you're like, go for a jog, have a cold beer, it's a hot day.
Sure.
So I could always find an excuse. So I sat down one day and said to my wife, you know what, I'm just going to come up with something that is going to force me to exercise every single day. It sort of began from there. And originally it was just going to be like a 5-kilometre walk each day. And then my wife said, well, what happens if you're travelling and you miss a day? I went, oh, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. So then somebody said, well, why don't you make an hour walk? So an hour walk usually equates to about 6 kilometres, about 4 miles, I think. So I went, okay, and therefore if I miss a day, I just have to make up that hour walk. Just before I started, I think it was Gary Vee, and I was listening to, and he said, if your life is worth anything, it's worth recording. And I was already listening to podcasts. I thought, well, wouldn't it be good if I did a walk, listen to a podcast, and then I just record some thoughts to myself of what I learnt, and I could look back on these in years to come, and so could my children and grandchildren. And then a friend of mine said, you selfish bugger. I said, what? They said, well, why don't you just share them with everybody? Why keep them to yourself? And I went, oh, a bit putting it out there.
All that genius, you just can't keep it to yourself.
Well, I did the first couple. I thought, no one's going to want to look at these. I've had everything from, you'll shoot a video. And most of my videos, the goal is always to stay between, say, 90 seconds and 60 seconds to 1 to 2 minutes.
Sure.
If I get overly excited, I sometimes extend it.
We know when you talked about our stuff, you had to go on for at least 5 minutes, I think.
Just explain who you were. Because you guys have got an amazing story as well.
Thank you.
So, it sort of just grew from there where all of a sudden 10 people were watching it. And then I've had some videos where, I've had 2,500 people look at the video. And it just happens to be, it's because you'll be talking. And usually what I found is about halfway through, I started tagging the hosts of the show and then also tagging the guests that I was listening to. And if they commented or shared it, all of a sudden the amount of views would actually increase with it. I finished the first year, and when I finished it, I went, I don't think I'll ever do that again. It was because it didn't matter. Over that 1 year period when I did this, I went to Japan. I walked in Japan. It was freezing cold. I walked through the desert in Arizona and came across a rattlesnake and a bobcat having a fight.
Who won?
Bobcat.
Okay, good.
And then I walked in Las Vegas. I walked in pretty much every city of Australia. I had so much travel on last year. I never took that into account when I started the challenge, which what it did, it taught me accountability.
Yes.
Yeah, I made myself accountable to the world that I was going to complete this challenge.
We were paying attention.
And it taught me organization skills. I had to really plan my week out on what I was actually doing. I couldn't just leave it by chance that maybe I'll get a walk in. I really had to look at my diary and think, when am I fitting these walk in amongst everything else that I was doing?
And you know what? This is really how you segue nicely into that, because we start our podcast every year with a word of the year. And I noticed that your word of the year is connection.
Yes.
And our word of the year is accountability. This is something that I started about 10 years ago with my teenage children at the time. And I had a sufficient amount of eye rolling when I introduced that word into our home. But I thought that was a really good indication that I was doing my job as a parent.
We always say that when the eyes are rolling, that means you've got their attention. You're doing the things you need to be doing as a parent.
Means I heard you.
We love that accountability thing. And I think that's what really inspired us by what you do with your goal setting. So many people have a difficult time setting goals. I know in one of your podcast takeaways, you said that one of your people that you listen to said, don't make plans, don't make goals in January, because you haven't finished last year's goals, perhaps, right?
Yeah, that was Mark Menard, actually.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, why are you setting new goals in January when you haven't damn well finished the ones from last year? And he said, people keep thinking, he said that January is just a date on a calendar. Stop using it as a reason to give up on all your old goals and set some new ones that you're also not going to follow through with.
We feel the same way. The idea of New Year's resolutions and, these calendar date thing really has no significance. It's important to do it all the time and just keep after them.
Yeah.
What it is as a psychology professor is that I know that about human nature, that we tend to begin things the first of the month, the first of the week. We rarely say a new goal on Thursday afternoon at 3:00 in the afternoon. We aren't going to say, okay, today I'm going to start this. We usually do it in the morning. That's human nature to do that. But if we take a conscious approach, the way you're suggesting, we can do it anytime, correct?
Yes. Well, if you look at the date of when I started my first 365-hour challenge, it was the 30th of August.
Right.
It had no significance whatsoever. It was a Wednesday. I never looked at when the year would actually finish, what day it even fell on, so it therefore fell on a Thursday. There was really no, I'm going to start on the 1st of the month. And everyone kept asking me, why the 30th of August? What's the significance?
It just happened.
It was the day after I decided I was going to start doing this.
So you get 2 extra gold stars for overriding that human tendency that we have and pushing through distraction and other things that might have led you away from your goal.
Yeah, but this year, when I've restarted the challenge, and I did pick I can't remember the exact day I started, it was also not a significant date, but it was a significant day that when I finish, it will fall on a Friday or a Saturday night, so we're going to have a bigger celebration.
Okay, we like that end result. We have to have a bigger party and celebration.
Yeah,
so
yes.
We were curious about your recent book that was out in October? I think.
Yeah, October.
It's no secret there's money in small business.
Yes.
Earn more, work less, enjoy what you do each day, which is certainly speaking to the choir with us.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about what inspired you to write the book.
And what got you to leave podiatry, basically? Because you had a successful business and you decided to move on and do other things.
I enjoyed podiatry while I was doing it, but after 30 years of sitting in the room, that a person would walk in and they could, by the time they got 4 or 5 words out of their mouth, I already knew what was wrong with them. I could diagnose the problem. I could tell them when it came on. And I would have a 12-year-old boy would walk into the clinic and I go, let me guess, you're a soccer player and you've got sore heels. And they would go, wow, you were good. And I go, I know.
How did you know?
Yeah. If it was a young girl, you would say, let me guess. And you would just tell by their stand, their body shape, what they were wearing. You knew what sport they played. And I could pretty much tell you what their problem was going to be. So it was just got to the point where it was clinically, it was getting boring. I felt I had given everything I could possibly give to the profession. And it's not that you can't always learn more. But I got to the point where I didn't want to learn anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd given as much as I could to it, and I thought it was time to sort of step back. And that's why now that I do coaching for podiatrists and other small business people, dentists, it's not just healthcare. And the book stemmed from my first book, which was It's No Secret There's Money in Podiatry.
Right.
This one, I could have gone back and rewrote my first one because I wrote that one in 2014. So I could have gone back and revamped that one, but I thought, you know what? No, I want to target this one to small business people in general. And I had a lot of new, fresh ideas. So it's like my old book, pumped full of steroids.
I love it. So one of the things I know you had a takeaway.
Poppy and I, we always try to, take jewels just like you do out of things that you listen to and study. And now you pointed out, make sure you understand what you're really good at and what distinguishes you in your business, whatever practice you have, so you can make a point of selling that added value.
Yeah, I think too many businesses, they try and cover too many bases instead of just covering one base. So, like in America, if we're talking about baseball, for example, you've got 3 bases out there in the home plate. You can't cover them all yourself. You need people to help you, but you might be a specialist first baseman. Your training is to get better and better at that. And I think in business, it's the same thing. There's going to be certain things that you like doing and you're really good at. And if you really focus on those areas, you will attract people to your business because of that speciality that you've created. But it doesn't mean that you don't do anything else. It just means you're getting the things that you want to do. And it might be the thing that you want to do may also, if you're lucky, will also be the one that brings in the highest amount of money too, for your time and effort.
Right. One of the takeaways that I had was nearing the last pages of your book. And because I have an affinity for psychology, you say, quote, you need to understand how your mind works. Small goals will not push you mentally because you already know they can be achieved with little or no additional effort. However, larger goals require you to think and act vastly differently. To achieve a goal like tripling your income, you must first believe you can do it. And once you believe it is a possibility, only then will you take all the necessary steps required for its attainment. And we thought that was a bravo hand clapping.
And it kind of speaks to, we think, one of the things that I believe you're also a follower of, the law of attraction.
Yeah, but one thing I must admit, after you reading that, I write far better than I talk.
No, you talk just fine.
And
you've got that Boston accent there that throws us off.
What I meant when I wrote that, I was at a conference, and I may have written that earlier on in that chapter.
Yes, in 1998.
Yeah, and I was at this conference, and the guy was up on stage said, okay, I want everyone to write down how much money they made this year, and you wrote it down. He said, okay, now I want you to write down what's your goal to turn over this year. So we all sat down, we wrote it down. He said, now write down all the things you need to do to get from where you are now to actually reach that goal. And we went, okay, so we started writing all these things down. He goes, now that's really good. Give yourself a round of applause. So we all clapped, little clap for sound effects. And then what happened next? He said, okay, now I want you to look at that income goal and I want you to put an extra 0 on it.
I love it.
So if you'd put down $100,000 or something, it was now $1 million.
Right.
And all of a sudden the room just go, oh. And he goes, okay, those things that you wrote down that you need to do, will they get you to that $1 million target? And if they won't, then you're limiting yourself. Most people keep setting safe goals because they think, with a bit of work, I probably can make it. But to make it, put an extra zero on. And then he said to us, and I don't think I wrote this in the book, because I have a lot of thoughts when I'm writing and not every thought ends up on paper. He said, now you might think, can you get from what you wanted to that, say, $1 million target? He goes, now picture there's someone and they've got your children tied up and at gunpoint. And they said, if you do not in the next 12 months hit that goal, we will kill your children.
Oh my gosh.
Now, what would you be prepared to do to make sure you achieve that goal? And straight away, you could see the emotion in the room. I really felt it at that time. And it just made me realize, wow, you limit yourself so much if you just say, next year I'm going to make $100,000. Well, why can't it be $1 million? And if you don't,
right, exactly.
If you only end up making $550,000, I'm sure you're still going to be happy.
Right, exactly. It's so important. We have our friend and our master mentor is Jack Canfield, the Chicken Soup for the Soul guy, who we spent some time with last spring. And we really were inspired by him. And we talked a lot with Jack. We shared about how limiting beliefs can really hold all of us back. Do you do anything on a daily basis to practice the law of attraction, to be consciously aware of it?
I think listening to a podcast every day definitely helps me. So I've modified the mental and physical challenge a little bit this year. It's not stringent as it was last year. I'm sort of making slight changes to make it easier for other people to follow it and do something similar themselves. But I think listening to a podcast every day, I'm always getting that little bit of positive input.
Nice.
And trying to associate with people who make me feel good about myself, not people who bring me down.
Absolutely. That's important. So Poppy and I were curious because we do relationship coaching and helping people in their relationships.
Yeah.
And we noticed that in so many relationships, especially, intimate relationships, married couples, dating couples, they often struggle with sharing what they're really feeling and speaking openly about concerns they have. Does the same thing hold true in Australia? Do couples struggle in just in the same fashion, or is your culture and social norms different about that?
I think Australia we're probably worse.
Oh, really?
Yeah, in Australia, we're classed as being yobbos sometimes.
What's a yobbo?
A yobbo? It's sort of, it's hard to explain. No, I don't know. You'd have to look it up in an urban dictionary.
Is it an onomatopoeia? It sounds like what it is.
Yeah, we're a bit laid back and we're a bit casual, and we like going to football and drinking beer and having barbecue with your friends. A lot of guys like being blokes, like being really manly and not show their feelings. And
yes.
Oh, so it is worse than the United States then. Okay, great.
Yeah, whereas I find the United States, because I go over there every year, and I feel men in the United States are more in touch with their emotions and sharing how they feel than Australia. You go to an event in America and if it's a large event, there'll be people up clapping and dancing and cheering on chairs. You go to an event over here in Australia, it's not exactly the same. We're a little bit more
reserved,
laid back, and I don't need to get up and dance on the chair. I'm dancing on the inside.
Yes. So you have that British influence, I think, maybe, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And like I can only speak for what I've seen. Another Australian might listen to this and go, "Oh, you're totally wrong." But they would agree there's a lot of yobbos in Australia.
And I love that. No, we have a new word to use. I really like it. Tell us about how do you, or what you've seen with other people, how do you approach and then ultimately resolve conflict, any challenges in relationships, whether it's with a family member, a friend, a colleague, a work-related. How do people, would you say, approach and then resolve conflict?
This has always been a struggle of mine, is to sometimes share with people what I'm feeling at the time.
Okay.
I'm not a person that if all of a sudden there's conflict, I can't dive in and just argue with them. I tend to step back and sort of just assess what's actually going on. And if I do sort of just dive in and say something, it's usually always the wrong thing. And so it takes time for me to sort of understand what's going on. If you ask my wife how good am I at communicating with our relationship, she'd probably say I'm shocking. But the thing that's really good is my wife is my best friend.
Beautiful.
Even if we have a disagreement and all that, it would rarely would it last more than 12 hours.
Oh, nice.
it'd be something that, we might have a discussion about something in the morning, but then an hour later, we're finding, and we've always been really open to talk. And most of the times too,
and you address the problem.
Yeah, and usually, and I hate admitting it, is normally she's always right.
Oh, don't be hating on admitting that. That actually, if you do admit that, it improves all areas of your relationship, especially intimacy, deep connection, feelings.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Poppy and I, we do a lot of work with the Myers-Briggs personality assessments and traits. Have you ever studied that? Do you know what your Myers-Briggs?
No, I've heard of it. Oh, is this where you're different blue, yellow, different personalities, that type thing?
Oh, that's all sorts of different personality assessments.
Because we have done some days together, and my personality and my wife's personality, we are exact opposites to each other, yet what I lack, my wife has, and what she lacks, I have. So we're sort of almost like, put us both together, and we're almost like a perfect unit.
Yes.
Which I think is why we get on so well. But we have common goals, and we have common beliefs behind love, family, money, all those type of things.
Nice. Yes. And especially when those are aligned, that's absolutely critical in the relationship. We've even worked with couples, Tyson, who don't share a deep connection, do not share much intimacy, not necessarily physical intimacy, but just relational intimacy, interpersonal intimacy. They don't share it well, but their values are aligned because they both value socioeconomic status above all else. So if that's what makes that work, then it works. It wouldn't work for me and Jeff. It wouldn't work for us.
It wouldn't work for us either. I've seen that a lot where people, they both love showing off to people that, hey, we make this and we drive that car and this is our house and our kids go to this school.
Yes.
And a lot of the times I've seen a lot of those marriages fail as well.
Of course. And there isn't a lot of substance to them. There's not. But what we do is we work with couples to understand that, accept it, recognize it. And once they do, to embrace it and make the best of it if they are compelled to stay together and not split. So I just think that's an important distinction to make, not making a judgment about it, but to say make the best of it. If you have a common value that is not one of those ones that perhaps you and your wife and Jeff and I share.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes life interesting is we're all different. And couples are different. See, my wife and I, we sit there and shake our head when we'll hear about a couple who are married, they've got children, yet they have separate bank accounts still.
Yeah.
And that's like his money and that's her money. And I'm like, seriously?
Sure.
Yeah, like fair enough. Before my wife and I got married, we did have our separate bank accounts. But the day we said I do, our money was I always say to my wife, yeah, my money is her money and her money is her money. And we have one bank account. It's always been that way. And I never sit in there checking to see what she's been spending and she never checks to see what I've been spending. We trust each other completely when it comes to that side of thing.
Well, you just use our favorite word in relationships is trust.
Yeah.
You have to have that.
I would trust her with my life, which is great.
Tyson, if people want to find you, where can they find you and be inspired by your daily podcasts, your 365-hour mental and physical challenge?
Well, I've got a website, tysonfranklin.com. So just TYSON and Franklin like Benjamin.com. And on there I have my blog posts, different events that I'm running. There's a link there to my podcast where you can then go off to whichever platform you want to listen to. The 365-hour challenge will eventually be linked to my website, but at the moment it's just a separate Facebook page. So it's just the 365-hour mental and physical challenge. And if people listening to this are really, really cool people, they can find me on Facebook. Just look for Tyson E. Franklin.
You know, speaking of Facebook, we had just a query about social media.
How do people look at the social media there? Are folks consumed by it? Do they love it? Do they hate it? What are the perspectives on how people look at Facebook and social media?
Once again, I can only talk for the people that I know, but sometimes I find it's a love-hate relationship and everybody is that way, that they love it, but at the same time they hate how much of a distraction it can easily be. And I think a lot of it doesn't matter which social platform we're on, it comes back to your own discipline on when you use it and when you don't.
Yes.
And I think there's nothing worse, and I think Anna and Will, Love and Money episode, said the same thing when they're sitting at a restaurant and they're having a beautiful conversation and they look over at another couple and they're both there on their mobile phones.
Oh, that just drives us nuts too, because this is your moment for intimacy. This is your moment for connection, and they're both looking down at their phones.
And I look at that myself and I sort of go, have I been guilty of doing that? I couldn't say that I've never done it.
But you're conscious of it.
Yeah.
Well, Tyson, we know you have a goal of getting 50 podcasts, and we know we've checked one of those off your list here tonight.
Thank you. Yes.
So how are you on that goal?
Yeah, so I set a goal to be a guest on 50 podcasts this year. I think I'm up to about 13.
Oh, fantastic.
Which has been great. And I've also never thought about this, but I've been a guest on 2 online summits.
Yes.
Which sort of came about from it as well. So I'm going to count that as it's not a podcast, but
it counts.
It still counts.
Sure.
It's a cousin.
Yeah, because I know those recordings are then eventually going to turn up on podcasts. So I'm counting them. And my other goal is to get Richard Branson on my show.
Yes.
So I will get him on before the end of the year.
Sure.
But not before I have you guys on.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been so fun talking with you. And if you want to listen to Tyson's podcast, it's No Secret with Dr. T. You can
Not
watch
Mr. T. He's a little different looking than Tyson.
Yes. Yeah. You can listen to his brief fun. It's so inspirational. You have a minute of inspiration. You know, it's like Cliff Notes on a podcast walk. So we title our podcast today, this Relationship Restaurant number 25, Walk the Talk, because that's what you literally and figuratively do every day. We're so proud and impressed by you. And we thank you so much for joining us and engaging our listeners. And if you have any questions, you can find Tyson, TysonFranklin.com or PoppyandJeff.com and reach out to us. We'd love to hear your questions. And if you want to be a guest on anybody's show, please reach out to both of us.
And Tyson, we look forward to someday meeting you down under. That's one of our goals, to get to Australia someday. So we look forward to meeting you there.
Yeah, everybody wants to come to Australia. It's not as far as what people think. It's just over the water.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. This has been fantastic.
Good talking to you.
Thank you, Franklin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.